Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to. We're getting ready to record Mike in the Midwest. Let's get the levels right and we'll get cracking here. Check. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Looks like we are good there. 57 works. Let's double check. In here. Check. 1, 2. I think we're good. How about we record episode 103 of Mike in the Midwest? Da. Talk to me, Goose. Here we go. This one's for Dr. Kai. Here we go. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 103 of Mike in the Midwest, a mini podcast for the amazing patrons just like you of the Be Our Guest podcast. Of course, I'm the host of the show, Mike Rallman, here sitting in the beautiful Be Our Guest podcast studios in St. Peters, Missouri, about 20 miles west of St. Louis. We're a beautiful little suburb in the next county over from downtown St. Louis. We could almost see the arch, almost, not quite, but you can almost see the arch from where we are. So hope you are doing well, having a great week. It is hot here back in the Midwest. It is going to be, they say this afternoon, 100 degrees. We're going to break another record today. We are all about breaking the records this summer. And today, by the way, is the first day of summer, June 21st. 2022, the longest day of the year, the longest it'll be light outside today. So if you like long evenings, tonight is the night to get out there and play some frisbee, walk the dog, whatever it is, get your run in late, because after today, the days get shorter. Sad to say, but we are going to find out that I know a lot of people are fans of fall, so fall is on the way, but don't rush that because it's summer and summer is awesome. So we are going to have a fun Mike in the Midwest episode for you today. And today's show is an idea from Dr. Kai, my good buddy down in Arkansas, one state to the south of us here in Missouri. And we're going to get to that in just a second. But I wanted to send a shout out to my good friend Kai down in Jonesboro. He's been a friend of the show from forever. And we don't get to see each other in person near enough. We've crossed our paths a few times in Epcot, at Walt Disney World. And I treasure the times we get to hang out because he knows more Disney than I'll ever know. And the stuff that he's into with his daughter, Ella, the retro Epcot stuff is the stuff that I'm really intrigued by, but I just don't have the background knowledge of. I love the stuff. And every time I get to hear a Wedway radio or a 3028 or any other kind of blog post or anything on those topics, I love the stuff. But I know Dr. Kai and his daughter know way more about that stuff. And I love when he shares that kind of information with me on the social media. And I really, really appreciate when he shares retro topics with me, like Commodore 64 computers. The other day, he shared a post about an SX64 computer, which I know there's probably maybe two of you out there that have any idea what an SX64 computer is. Now, let me just tell you, this is from my child. This is a topic that when he shared that to me, I mean, it was so awesome because I've talked about this here on Mike in the Midwest. I was a nerdy kid and I still am a nerdy adult. And I think a lot of us kind of tend to be a little bit nerdy, which being a nerd nowadays is kind of cool. That just means we're smart. We like what we like. We're confident in who we are. And, forget everybody else. If they don't like who we are, too bad. We're special people. I was a nerd, but I also played sports. So I kind of got the best of both worlds. That's the way I looked at it. That's what my parents told me. And that's what I went with. But anyway, I was a nerdy kid. I didn't have an NES ever. I was talking with my good buddy Kevin, who calls into the podcast sometimes from Ohio. And we joke, we've been emailing back and forth about retro stuff. And I told him, I was like, I never got to own an NES back in the day. I own the little NES Mini now that has about 50 or 60 games on it. But I never owned an NES because my parents bought me a Commodore 64 when I was super young. And the thing was, I got a modem with the Commodore 64 right away, and I would download software. It probably wasn't legal, but everybody did it back in the day. And I never paid for games. I would just go to a local BBS, download whatever they had and played those games. Or actually before I even started downloading software, I would buy a magazine or a book and I would type in software line by line. I'd type in the code and then you would save it to a cassette. It was called a data set. Then eventually I got a disk drive. I was really living then, a 1541. But so anyway, I was a nerd, so I had a computer, but when most kids had Ataris, and I did have an Atari 2600 before this, but I never had an NES because my dad was like, "You are not paying $50 per game. Just download them." There's tons of games out there, and there were over 20,000 games for the Commodore 64 of all genres. Raid Over Moscow was one of my favorites. Of course, you had all the ports from the arcade games, stuff like that. But anyway, back to the SX64, because this show is just Mike rambling for 30 minutes every week. I don't know why anybody listens to this, but this is actually the kind of shows I love listening to on the treadmill, because I love podcasts of like a guy in his garage or a guy in his basement just telling stories from back in the day, because it's such a distraction. This is kind of stuff I like, but I don't know that anybody else does. But anyway, the SX64, what this was, it was a Commodore 64 in a compact. Now, let me use compact in a very loose way, compact form. So what it was a portable Commodore 64. And what I mean by portable, they called it a luggable, because I think this thing was about 50 pounds. It was not the MacBook Air. It was not a laptop computer that you could pull out of a manila envelope like Steve Jobs and wow the crowd. This was a huge thing that had a handle. It was like a suitcase. But what it had was, it had a detachable keyboard that would fold over when you wanted to transport it. It like folded over and the keys were on the inside, so they were protected. And it covered up the screen, which had a little color. It was a little color screen, probably about 2.5 inches diagonal, and it had a 5.25 inch disk drive there that you could put floppy disks in. So you had a monitor, 2.5 inch color monitor, a disk drive, and the Commodore 64 operating system with a detachable keyboard that had a cord there that connected everything. And it was awesome because you could take it on the road. My dad brought this home one night. Again, I've talked about my dad. He's awesome. He played in bands all the time growing up. He was a drummer. He still is. He plays drums at the church. So he was in this band, and he made a trade with a guy that he was the bass player in the band. His name was DeWitt. And he made, I don't know how DeWitt came across this SX64, but I know DeWitt owned a music store in Overland, Missouri, here in the suburb of St. Louis. And I don't know what my dad traded for this, but my dad was kind of a nerd too. He liked this stuff. My dad traded something, which I don't know, for this SX64. So he comes home. My dad played on Friday and Saturday nights at Meadow Park Steakhouse till 1 a.m. And so one Sunday morning, he comes home with this SX64. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like, and I hadn't even ever seen one. So this was like in the 80s. I'm like, dude, it's like it blew my mind. It was a portable Commodore 64, and I played the crud out of that thing. I'd just take my discs and put them in that little drive, and the thing worked like a champ. It was great. It had a cartridge slot, so you could put a fast load cartridge in the top that made it load nominally faster, but it was an amazing device. And so I used it and used it. Eventually, you just kind of forget about it because I upgraded and I ran a BBS for years and years and had many, many drives hooked to a Commodore 64. And this was all in my bedroom growing up and, through middle school and stuff. But I eventually one day, probably about 10 years ago, maybe less, I asked my dad, I was like, whatever happened to that SX64? Because I would love to have that and get that running again. My dad threw it away. He's like, it was so big and nobody was using it. I just threw it away. I'm like, oh, because my dad, not really a pack rat. My wife is totally not a pack rat. She throws everything away. So, I was brokenhearted because I would love to have that SX64. But I don't even know how I got started talking about this. But anyway, that was the story of the SX64 here on a show that has nothing to do with that. But it's been hot. And there you go. You know a little bit about it. Just look it up. It was a very, very ahead of its time computer. Just Google SX-64. It was a remarkable machine. It was robust. I mean, it never gave me any trouble. I think I could have run a BBS off of that. I think I might have tried. It didn't even have heat issues, but the thing was heavy. It was like a huge suitcase, but it was awesome. Luggable Commodore 64. I loved my SX64. I don't know what my dad traded for it. I'll have to ask him and find out. Anyway, it's hot here. We're getting Mallory ready to go to cheer camp. We're going to Disneyland a week from Sunday. So we have about, what's that? Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So we have 11 days till our trip, and then we'll be heading out to the West Coast. I cannot wait. I'm bummed though. I thought that I had the perfect hack. I told Scott about this. I got an Instagram ad yesterday for this great Cardinals baseball cap. The all the baseball teams wear special caps on the holidays, like on Father's Day, they wear a cap that has the logo that's kind of blue. But on the 4th of July, they always wear like a patriotic version of your team cap. And they just released what the hats are going to look like for the 4th of July this year. And they're awesome. They look like a flag, but they really look neat this year. So I told Scott, I said, Scott, I got a deal, free shipping. We need to get these hats. I'm going to get the Cardinals one. You get the Tigers one, and we'll wear them at Disneyland on the 4th of July. It'll be epic. So I ordered my hat with my free shipping for the one day. And Scott ordered his. And then he texted me last night. He's like, dude, you saw that, right? I'm like, what? Did you get the free shipping? I think he did. He's like, the hats don't ship until July 1st. I'm like, oh, man, I never look at the details. And we fly out on July 2nd. So I will not have the hat for Disneyland on the 4th of July, but I'll have it after. And this gets into the next topic, which was Father's Day. I had a great Father's Day. Now, I did not get to celebrate with both of my daughters. My one daughter, of course, is in the Windy City. She's up in Chicago doing her job. She's doing a great job. She's been killing it up there. They've been working hard up at the University of Chicago, Illinois, Chicago, the Flames. I've seen it, you could check them out on social media, especially Instagram. Check them out. They're trying to build their following. So look up, let me grab it here and get their exact handle because I'm trying to help out a daughter here. They are UIC_WBB for the University of Illinois, Chicago women's basketball. So again, UIC_WBB, give them a follow. And Paige Pender is my daughter. She's the director of basketball operations. So she is getting them all squared away for a great season of basketball. I'm sure they had a challenging season last year, but I'm sure this season will be better. But you can see their coverage, but they were doing parades in the community. They did a big Juneteenth celebration in the community this past weekend. But I did get to talk to her on the phone, which was great. And I called her on Father's Day and and she answered right away. And sometimes she's too busy to answer, right? Your kids, when you get older kids, you'll find this out. But I told her, I knew you would answer today because it's Father's Day. You better answer or else you're in trouble. So she did answer. We laughed and we talked. And she took the basketball team. Again, these, young women that are athletes that are probably between the ages of 18 and 20, 21. My daughter's 26. She was always an athlete in high school, so she can relate really well to them. And she took the team and organized that they went on that Chicago architectural boat tour where you go on the boat on the Chicago River and see all the buildings. And they talk about how there's a story of the history of Chicago through the architecture of each building and the styles. And you go out into a little bit of Lake Michigan at the end. And she talked about how cool that was. And I had done that this past October when I ran the Chicago Marathon. I thought it was amazing. So it's really cool to see your kids, and she's a young woman. She's 26. She's a woman. And she's really kind of coming into her own and helping other student athletes become better people and really engage with the community. So I'm super proud of her. So that made me really happy on Father's Day. Also, Mallory, for Father's Day, took me to see Top Gun Maverick, which is going to be the epicenter of today's podcast here in just a minute. So we'll be talking about that, some of my memories of Top Gun back in the day and what I thought of the movie, because Dr. Kai wanted me to do a movie review, which I'm not really good at because I'm terrible. I never watch movies, but I'll kind of spin that a little ways here in just a second. But I was super proud that Mallory said, because she had seen it already with her friend Ava, her cheerleading friend, but she said, Dad, you got to see this movie, because she knows I love airplanes, Blue Angels, space. And so she said, we are going to see Top Gun Maverick on Father's Day. I want to sit next to you. I want to see you cry. And I did. Spoiler. But we'll talk about that in just a minute. So I got to see Top Gun Maverick with my youngest daughter. That was pretty epic. And for Father's Day, I got tickets to the Cardinals game on July 16th, which that is good because I get to wear my hat, which won't be here for Disneyland. But I'll get to wear it to the game on July 16th. I hope it'll be here by then. And I'll be styling my Stars and Stripes hat to the Cardinals game. And because I want to get to see Albert and Wayno and Yachty one last time. And that might be it. So Father's Day was awesome. Hope all the Disney dads out there had a great Father's Day. The biggest thing was I got to spend time with my family. That's it. I got to talk to Paige. I got to spend time with Mallory. She's going to be gone really from here on until we go to Disneyland. So I'm glad I got to see her because they their high school cheerleading squad, the varsity and the JV, they go for 4 days out to Kansas for a cheer camp out at Great Wolf Lodge in Overland Park, I think. So they're getting on a bus and they're going to be next week. They're gone the whole week basically. And she does a cheer camp for All-Star Cheer for her Platinum Athletic Squad, which you've been seeing on social media over the last few years. So they do that over this weekend. So Saturday and Sunday, she does that. She does a boot camp on Friday for back handsprings. So I will not really see her hardly from now. And she's got cheerleading all day today. She's got practice today for both squads. I will hardly see her from now until Disneyland. So it'll be nice to get to reacquaint myself with my daughter when we hit the plane on July 2nd. So that'll be great. Great timing. So anyway, that is where we are here. It's hot. My daughter's disappearing. So I'm pretty much with my wife and myself. We're doing a little empty nesting, I think, here next week a little bit as we get ready to go to Disneyland. And we'll get ready to enjoy some cooler weather because it's hot as smoke. It's supposed to be 101 here, I think, Friday, Saturday. That's just ridiculous. That's stupid. We don't need it that hot. Like 90s, it's supposed to be 90s in June in St. Louis. That's fine. That's why it's what we signed up for. I didn't sign up for 101. That's crazy. I'm not even going outside for that. I mean, Riley's got to go to the bathroom. I'm like, you're on your own. Just go out there and do your thing, and I'll be waiting here in the AC. So anyway, let's hit the feedback from last week's show. Last week, again, we were talking about beating the heat back in the day because it was a little bit different. The old attic fan was our air conditioner because we didn't have a lot of money, and we just that's just kind of how everybody in the neighborhood did it. You know, we didn't have a lot of people that had air, so we didn't have it either. So we just turned on the old attic fan, and it sounded like there was a speaking of Top Gun, there was an F-14 Tomcat in our hallway, and it just blew in 95-degree air, and we thought it was the greatest thing ever. So here's what we got. Trisha Helwig of Wisconsin said she didn't have central air as a kid either. We would hide out in the basement. Good call. That's what I've done. My dad would drag the box TV downstairs and we would watch VHS tapes. Since we only had rabbit ear antennas, no reception in the basement. If we were outside, it was eating a lot of popsicles or drinking Jolly Good, our version of Vess. That's the cheap sodas here in St. Louis. And running through the sprinkler. I always preferred the fan sprinkler because it hurt less to run through versus those sprinklers that made the sound. That solid spray of water was painful. Yes. Oh my gosh, Trisha, we could have been hanging in the same yard. This is exactly right. Now, here's the thing about basements. We had a basement in my first house where I grew up until I was in 6th grade, like my childhood house. But I'm an asthmatic and I have severe allergies and asthma. I have allergies so bad that when I was a child, I had to go to the pediatrician twice every single week and get shots for my allergies. And I thought every kid did this. I had to go twice a week and I would have to go in, get my shot, sit out in the waiting room for 30 minutes and see if I had a reaction. After 30 minutes, you would go back in, the nurse would look at your arm and give you the yay or nay, whether you can go home because it either swelled up or it didn't. And that was just my life. And I would spend every Halloween in the emergency room because I couldn't breathe. Because once the leaves fell and they got musty and moldy, I would always have asthma attacks. And I still have issues with asthma. I have an inhaler that controls that, and it's not exercise induced, but I can have struggles with it. But I do the best I can with my running and so forth, and allergies and stuff. So I've got it pretty much under control at this point. But basements were kind of off limits for me as a kid because my parents kept me out of, they told me pretty much I was allergic to basements. Like I remember telling people I was allergic to going to their basement because basements around here tended to be musty and kind of moldy, and mold is a huge trigger for me. Any kind of mold, and I am seriously in big trouble. Like I'm almost immediately having to go to the emergency room. And so I would tell people, looking back, it was so stupid, but to me, I thought I was allergic to basements as a kid. But you're right, that was the way to beat the heat. And now that we have this house that we live in now, the podcast studio is in the basement. It's a fully finished basement, fully carpeted. It's just as nice as the upstairs, but it's always the same temperature down here, and it's awesome. So you're exactly right. Basements rock in the summer and in the winter. It is great. Dennis Keithley down in Texas, my good buddy, says beating the heat as a mood was usually either going to Bluebird Park's swimming pool in Ellisville, which is a suburb of St. Louis out in West County, or swimming at a neighbor's pool. I do remember one summer where all the neighborhood kids got together and filled a couple hundred water balloons before engaging in a massive water balloon fight. Hanging out in front of the TV watching afternoon cartoons with a box fan blowing directly on us was also a great way to get out of the sun for a while. Dennis, thanks so much. Let me tell you about what Dennis just brought up. And this is wrong. So you're right. We would do water balloon fights too as a kid. But here's the deal. When we were again, this is one of those like get off my lawn stories. When we were a kid, and even when Paige was a kid, when I was, Paige's stepdad and Pam and I were dating and I was trying, Pam always says when I was still trying to win her over. But I was just trying to be the good, dad to Paige, my stepdaughter. She was like 5 or 6 and we'd do water balloon fights. But back in the day, we had to like fill every water balloon one at a time with the hose. We got a little spigot thing you'd buy at Walgreens, the drugstore, and you would put it on your hose and it would just have like an on-off nozzle, but you would fill one at a time, right? Have you gone to like Sam's, or it's not Sam's, but like Walgreens or Walmart or anything nowadays? They have these things, and I don't even know exactly how they work, but apparently you can hook them to your hose and they will fill like 100 water balloons in one swoop. Like you hook it up and it automatically fills them and even ties the water balloons. Like, where's the work? You're going to be reckless with how easily you throw your water balloons at people. I mean, when you had to work that hard to make your water balloons, you made sure your shot counted. You did not throw willy-nilly. You made sure that you had missile lock on somebody. Speaking of today's topic, you did not just go at it and say, I'm just going to see if I can hit them. Nope. You had to be locked. And I'm serious. Life was harder in the day. Look, go to the store when you go down the toy aisle. You can buy things. You hook it to your hose, it'll fill up 100 water balloons and tie them. Where's the fun in that? And finally, Len Wilcox, my good buddy out in Maryland, says, we didn't have AC in Michigan when I was growing up. We definitely spent time running through the sprinkler or sliding down a slip and slide. I used to stack hay on a hay wagon behind a baler. My brother-in-law talks about doing that all the time. He's from Indiana. Our only way to stay cool during that was a gallon of frozen Kool-Aid. You could either drink it or hold it against your face to cool down. Here's a link to the list of annual temperatures by decade in St. Louis. Looks like you are definitely dealing with more heat since growing up. And he gives a link. And yes, it is historically hot right now. Yeah, it is funny. And getting back to Trisha, I do remember like the sounds of summer in that, but then that thing would get to the end and go and kind of come all the way back around. But that's childhood, man. I don't know if I could have, if I didn't have that, would my childhood have been as awesome? I don't think so. Because I had an awesome childhood. I wouldn't change a thing. I loved it. It was hard, but it was awesome. It was great. And I hope you guys had a great childhood. I know you did. Because we did the cool stuff. We didn't even know that we were burning up. Like, we got sunburns all the time as a kid. We didn't care. Like, I mean, now we're kind of paying for it, but we didn't care back in the day. That's just kind of, it was July. That's just what we did. You got sunburn, you stunk, and you put stuff on it, and you went out the next day and played. Anyway, let's talk about today's stuff. So thanks for the feedback. And this show is always driven by feedback. So I can't wait to share more feedback next week. So please do drop by. Feedback on today's show or any show, just swing by patreon.com/BeOurGuest podcast. I'm waiting to hear what you have to say today. You can talk about summer. You can talk about today's topic, which I got to tell you, it's a little bit emotional. We're going to talk about Top Gun Maverick. And again, Dr. Kai asked me to do a movie review. I don't really want to spoil it because I don't know if everybody's seen the movie. I mean, it's been out for quite a while at this point, but I will say, I'll try to do this without spoilers. I loved this movie. I have not been to the movies since Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker, the last Star Wars. I do not watch movies very often. I watch sports. I watch every Cardinals game. So that's 162 games. I'm not kidding. I will watch every Cardinals game that's on TV. I watch college football like crazy. I will watch occasional hockey, but I'm always watching a sporting event every night. So it doesn't leave a lot of time for series or other stuff like movies. I am watching Obi-Wan and I'm loving every second of it. It's awesome. And I know the last show's tomorrow. So I'm hating that it's over. But anyway, back to Maverick. So I obviously remember in 86, I was in 7th grade, when 6th or 7th grade, when the original Top Gun came out. And this movie was epic, right? Every kid, where I grew up in my circle of friends, the guys, we all wanted to be pilots. We all wanted to be as cool as Tom Cruise and Goose and Merlin and, Hollywood and Iceman and everybody from the movie. I mean, it was a rush, right? The F-14s and the aircraft carriers and the MiGs and everything like that, and the great music. Danger Zone was awesome back in the day. It was just that adrenaline summer movie. It was just, we talked about it all the time. So Mallory had never seen the original Top Gun. She's 14. And she's, again, I have two daughters. I never had a son, which I'm glad. I'm thankful. I love being a girl dad. It's the best. I would never, ever change a thing. People are always like, do you wish you had a son so you could coach sports? No, I love it. I love that my daughter's a cheerleader. I love that Paige was an athlete. She played, basketball. She played soccer. She played softball, and now she's running a basketball team. Couldn't be more proud. And I would not change a minute of everything I have. So we went to see Maverick. And when my daughter said, we got to go see Maverick, I was like, oh my God, because there's so many times, I don't know if you feel this way, but I still feel like I'm living my life from when I was, in middle school, even though I'm 48. Sometimes I don't feel that I'm an adult. I still have I still like the things I like, and I still like watching F-14s. I still like watching the Blue Angels. They're not F-14s anymore. They're Super Hornets. They're F-18s. But I still like watching fighter jets go as fast as they can. I like hearing them to where your ears bleed and where you can feel the concussion wave. It's awesome. I love the music, but I'm not a movie guy anymore. But the fact that we got to go and Father's Day was all about me. We got to go have Mexican food for lunch at my favorite Mexican restaurant. Got to have a margarita. I got to ride in my Jeep. The girls typically will argue and balk about riding in the Jeep because right now the top's down, the doors are off. It's pure summer mode in my Jeep because I take it, but the girls, Mallory has super long hair. My wife hates it too because she doesn't like to wear hats. And so their hair is always destroyed by the time we get anywhere because we live right on a highway. So we're all, as soon as we go out of our subdivision, we're going 70 miles an hour. And I get it. I just put on a ball cap and I don't care. But they let me drive the Jeep with the doors off, top down, music blaring on 80s on. I mean, it was a beautiful, beautiful day. It was Father's Day. I was living my dream. I was with my girls. I just wish Paige would have been there, but she was doing what she's doing. So we got to go see Top Gun Maverick, and I'm not going to spoil the movie, but it was just about perfect. I mean, I kind of had an idea because I'd seen reviews. You know what's going to happen, right? You're going to have fighter jets. You're going to have Maverick flying jets, and he's going to be older, but he's going to have to save the world probably, right? Flying a mission. It's probably not going to be F-14s because, those were kind of on their way out even in the late 80s, but you're probably going to have the latest jets, and we got to see that. But the beginning of the movie I was impressed with. This isn't a spoiler, but the beginning of the movie reminded me very much of one of my other favorite movies, which is The Right Stuff. And Chuck Yeager breaking the sound barrier in the old X1. That very much called back to that. To me, I don't know if it did for everybody else, but it did to me. It got that kind of feel. And so I really, really kind of enjoyed that. It felt a little Right Stuff movie and book to me. So I like that. Of course, here the favorite part, one of the things I really enjoyed about the movie was the intro, was the music. It was the Top Gun theme, not Danger Zone. Danger Zone was in it, and I love that too. But it was the Top Gun theme, the do 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 do, and they're on the aircraft carrier. That opening scene is exactly like the original Top Gun, and I loved it. Of course, the planes are not F-14s anymore; they're F-18s, I think. But it was perfectly done. It wasn't well done. It was perfectly done, in my opinion. But then we got a new cast of characters, which I really liked, a diverse group of characters. And it's weird because now I'm 48 and I'm not a middle school kid anymore. I'm a guy who's taught 17 years of elementary school. I'm a guy who's traveled. I'm a guy who was scared to fly. I'm a former instructor at Space Camp USA, which I didn't, that's nothing. I didn't fly or anything, but I got to meet astronauts down there, and I got to work in simulators and space, flight simulators and stuff like that. It was pretty cool. I got to work in the aerospace industry with some great people. But the best part about it is I got to teach some kids, one in particular, and her name's Alicia. It's going to be an emotional show. I'm telling you, I haven't even got to the emotional part, but she was one of my favorites. You're not supposed to have favorites as kids, but I taught her for 2 years, and it's not because she failed. It's not because she failed, because she was the smartest kid in the class. I looped one year. I taught 5th grade, and then I kept the same class and taught 6th grade with them because of how the staffing went, that they needed a 5th grade teacher for 1 year, so I went down to 5th grade, and then I kept those kids because I loved them, and I went to 6th grade with them, so I kept them together for 2 years as a kind of an experiment, and she was in that group, and I also actually taught her for 2nd grade. She was in my student teaching class, my very first teaching assignment when I student taught. She was in my 2nd grade student teaching class. So I had her for part of 2nd grade, 5th and 6th grade. And anyway, Alicia became just a great kid. I mean, just you want your daughters to emulate somebody. It was Alicia. Long story short, she graduated top in her class from our high school in our district, which was awesome. She was an athlete. She was a cheerleader. She played sports and cheered. She wasn't an athlete because she was a cheerleader. She played sports and cheered. She did everything. She got straight A's. Awesome. She told me when she was in my class, she goes, "Mr. Rallman, I'm gonna be an astronaut someday." I was like, "Whoa." Because this was right when I got back from teaching at space camp in the summers. I was doing both. I was teaching space camp in the summers and teaching at Wedgwood at the time. And we did a space week, and it was really cool. And I said, "You could do it. You're the smartest kid in the class, probably." The funniest thing was she wasn't in the gifted program. I had 6 kids out of that group of 26 that were in gifted. She was not. And she was the smartest out of all of them, in my opinion. It's just that she didn't score well on some crazy test, but she was the hardest worker. Anyhow, fast forward, she is now flying super tankers for the Air Force, which is pretty awesome. And she still wants to be an astronaut, and she's still in the Air Force, and she's probably on her way. But I mean, there's a female fighter pilot in this movie that I was just like, "Oh, that's Alicia." And you see that because you see people that are chasing dreams and doing spectacular stuff, and that was Alicia. So that was okay. I'm already emotional about this. That was Alicia, and that's why this movie was special to me, because I could see her doing special things. The other thing, of course, the elephant in the room is the relationship between Maverick and Goose. And then spoiler, Goose's kid is in this movie. I won't say too much about that. But the relationship between Maverick and Goose comes back, and it's strong in this movie, and they show flashbacks, and I'm so glad that they showed pieces of the original movie because I love that part. So in middle school, and I'm gonna do a Mike in the Midwest about my good friend Steve at some point. I don't know if I'm ready, and it's been 10 years, but I still don't know if I'm ready. But I want to do a story, an episode. I want to tell you guys about my good friend Steve. So he was my catcher all through Corey League baseball. I was a pitcher and he was my catcher. And we were not just pitchers and catchers, we were best friends. Um, Especially once I moved in the summer of 6th grade. I moved to a subdivision where they were building new houses called Fox Lake. And Steve had already lived in the subdivision that was adjoining that subdivision called Monteville. And it was great because you got to understand, when you're a boy, at least in the late 80s, in middle school, baseball players, and we could not get enough baseball. We watched any baseball game that was on TV during the day. We collected baseball cards, and we played wiffle ball nonstop every day. But we also did everything together. We would cut grass together. We would go to the water slides together. We would ride our bikes to the Chinese restaurant and get Chinese food together. We did everything together. Um, and I'm going to do a story about Steve, so I don't want to give it all away, but he was just my best friend. And he was he's my catcher. And pitchers and catchers, I mean, no joke, they have pretty good relationships because I was pitching to him in all my games in Corey League, but also, I mean, every day we were super competitive. And for like 3 seasons in Corey League, it was always Steve and I had the 2 highest batting averages, not only on our baseball teams, but in the entire league. We kept stats. We were that competitive. And it was always within a couple of hits between us for the whole season who had the best batting average. We loved each other, but God, we wanted to beat each other out hitting. But anyway, I lost Steve to he was in a car accident probably about 12 years ago at this point. He was killed by a drunk driver. Um, And it was really, really hard. I mean, it still is. I miss Steve to this day because the thing is, like, we went for years and years after we became adults and didn't really, we just didn't cross paths anymore. We went our separate ways. But Steve became a physical education instructor in a school here in St. Louis in the Pattonville School District, and was revered by his students. His students loved him. And but we crossed paths for we got to become good friends again about 5 years before Steve was in his accident. And we got to play softball in a men's slow pitch softball league again together. And it was like the old days, but we were old dudes. We were in our 40s at this point, or late 30s. And didn't move as quickly as fast as we did. And but we had a good time. We had a good time. We were really good at softball too, by the way. We beat up on some old chumps. We were still pretty, because we had a lot of our old baseball friends on that team. We couldn't move very fast. Steve was never fast. Steve was slow. I was always slow, but Steve was slower than me when it came to running. So neither one of us could outrun an elephant. But we could smoke out some of these old dudes in our league at St. Ferdinand Park, and because we could still hit and we could still catch a ball. But yeah. So the parts that came up with Maverick and Goose, and how Maverick, obviously in the original Top Gun lost his buddy kind of instantly and shockingly. That part, Mallory looked over to me and I was kind of tearing up a little, because not only is that an emotional part just in the movie, it's that I think everybody makes connections. It's as a teacher in literacy, we call it like text to text or text to world, or text to environment kind of connections. That brought me back to Steve, because Steve was my wingman. Steve was my buddy. And yeah, I got that call when I was at a soccer tournament in Columbia, Missouri, with Paige on a Saturday morning that it had happened late Friday night from his sister. And he wasn't drinking or anything. He was just hit by a guy that was going 110 miles an hour down the highway. And he was just out with friends and not doing anything wrong. Just happened to be in the back seat of a SUV, and it happened. And I still miss him to this day, And but I think movies, this isn't a great movie review. This is a terrible show. This is a terrible Mike in the Midwest. But I think that movies can do that for you. They make connections to your personal story. But this movie brought me back to not only the excitement of my childhood, right? Because I remember in middle school, like, we all wanted to be test pilots. We all wanted to be fighter jet jockeys, and we all wanted to fly the hottest plane, the F-14 Tomcat. We all want to have that Rio behind us and be the pilot up front. Do some of that pilot stuff, kind of have that kind of a relationship. And this movie has that. It was great. And it's the good against the bad. The funniest thing, though, that I told Pam about, I'm trying to get this back so that we're not all crying here at the end of the show, is that the funny thing is that in Top Gun, the original, it was definitely the United States and Russia. I mean, there was not a whole lot of gray area there. We were going up against Russian MiGs. We were in the Indian Ocean. That's how it was. It was Cold War. I mean, no doubt. In this movie, it could not be more abstract. It was the United States going up against some kind of bogey in some kind of enemy in some kind of mountainous place. That was it. We did not want to offend anybody. So it's kind of how the world has changed from 86 to 22. Still a great movie. Still a great movie. And it brought me back to that times where, it makes you think that you do have people that come into your life and they are your wingman. And you got to really appreciate those days every single day, because you never know when they are going to go away. And hold on to those memories forever. But those lines, talk to me, Goose, and you got to let go. And you do have to let go to people like Steve and people like Goose, I guess. But you also got to hang on to them, because those are special people that make you who you are and continue to shape your world even when they've moved on. So that's today's show. Not the most uplifting, not the most exciting, but I wanted to get that out there. And we'll talk about Steve, because we had some crazy, crazy fun times as kids, and even when we were beating up on some old dudes as adults. And he actually got me to my Jeep before I went down for a race weekend at Run Disney. and I didn't even think I was gonna be able to run that one, but I pulled a hammy, I think, round in second, when I thought I had an inside the park home run, but it was Steve that got me to my Jeep. I think I was gonna make it home that night. But, yeah, we'll have some Steve stories eventually, but not next week. But, thanks for hanging with me, and thanks for my therapy session, and I'm sorry that today's show was not the most exciting. I'm sorry that today's show was not super funny or cracking you up, but, this is just kinda what Mike in the Midwest is. That's, my journey. But Top Gun Maverick took me places, took me up in the old fighter jets. It took me back to my middle school years with Danger Zone and the Top Gun anthem, and wanting to be on the throttle there again. But it also reminded me of a very, very special person in my life and a special time. So hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you have some of those connections and those special people in your life as well. So until we get back together again next week, thank you so much for your friendship. I appreciate it more than you know. You stay safe, you stay healthy, and we'll see you real soon. All righty. Thanks for hanging with me, Corwin of Amber and Rob and everybody else. And I will see you soon.